Got to start somewhere, and getting your free agents back helps you build back towards the future for a three-peat. That's how they're doing it today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back in, friends and neighbors. We are brought to you today by FanDuel. Make every single moment more. Right now, new customers are getting $200 back in bonus bets after winning a $5 bet. That's $200 back on just a $5 bet that wins. At FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go over there and get started today. We are going to get started. A player moving on that I think is indicative of what the Chiefs have to do in this evolution as they run this dynasty forward. What does the D-line group look like being set up for 2024 and specifically for the draft? And it all starts on the biggest piece of news that Turk Wharton is back in the fold, having re-signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. Thanks for making us your first listen. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com and RGR Football, where you can get the athletic matrix, all my breakdowns as free agent signings, and everything you want at RGR, as well as NFL 33. He's Chris Clark. You can find him at Chiefs Corner, where he's running down the cap for you, and it changes constantly. So make sure you get subbed over on his Substack as well, and we will be there for you. The fact that we are on Locked On Chiefs means that we're here every single day, as well as the rest of the Locked On Network. So make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you click that little bell so that you get a notice when we do something new. And then if you want even more information, go over to the text line at 816-357-8781, as well as Spotify and Apple and every audio platform under the sun and on this planet. You can find us for free 5 days a week plus everydayers, so that they are subbed on multiple platforms, and we appreciate you guys. It's nice to see you. The big news, and we talked about this being part of the plan. Chris Jones was just job number one. He was pretty much alone in that defensive line room. Now they've brought Turk Wharton back on an interesting contract that you're going to have to explain to us. But first, what's your reaction?
I think it's a great move. I think that they need to bring Turk Wharton back. We kind of already talked Pennell a little bit, and I like that move too. It gives you depth. You still have Farrell there as well. So I'm not going to say they don't need to still add a defensive tackle, but I think you have to feel pretty good about what they have at defensive tackle, at least going into the draft. It wouldn't shock me if they add somebody else over the next couple of months if somebody is still sitting out there that doesn't get picked up before the draft happens, because that's when Kansas City seems to like to make a lot of their moves. And part of all of that is going to play into, what do they get done with L'Jarius Sneed? Are they going to keep him or are they going to trade him? We still don't know at this point. Still rumors out there that he could be traded. And if he is, it frees up a bunch of cap space to go do other things. So it's possible they'll be making some other moves if they end up trading him.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. In the meantime, it's about solidifying your room. And Chris has to have someone next to him. Turk Wharton was a heck of a find as a player that was off everyone's radar, that you brought in-house, you brought up yourself. Everything was going great. His athleticism on the field was unique. A couple of standout plays where he chased people down from behind, even at his size at 290 pounds. Impressive, and he might actually weigh in more than that now. I haven't checked his weigh-in lately. But the injury derailed him. I'm glad that they got him back, and I think the injury is probably part of it. He was a part-time player this last season, but did play big in the postseason, including the Super Bowl. And I think that warranted the contract that they gave him. It's an interesting offer. Lay it out for us.
So it looks like it's a 4-year qualifying offer, and what that means is they can pay him. What I think it came in $2.75 million. I think is what the numbers were, and they're going to get a little bit of. He's going to get a little bit of a bonus, but his salary is going to be the difference in that. And then, but the really big key here is if it is a 4-year qualifying offer, which it looks to be, he is only going to count, I think, maybe 1.4 or 1.5 million against the cap versus the whole almost 3 million. So it's a great deal for Kansas City. It's something that the NFL allows to try to bring guys back to their original rosters and give them a little bit more cash. And, in Wharton's case, he probably wasn't going to get an offer for $3 million. He didn't have a great season last year. As you said, he's coming off an injury, and I think that also plays into this. But this is something that Kansas City's used multiple times over the past couple of years. I mean, look back. I'm not so sure, but I think Noddy was on one last year. And Alec Grady was definitely on a 4-year qualifying offer last year. So Those are a couple of guys, and they've done it for several years. You're limited to 2 of those, and you can only use it on your own players. So, and they have to have been with your roster for 4 years. So, lots of different things that play into it, and Wharton hits all those. And congratulations, as we've already said, to Nick Allegretti for his deal. But look at what he was able to get after being able to play in the playoffs.
Yeah, and this is a not commonly used around the league, this technique and this kind of offer. As you said, you got to be on this roster. You got to be on your own players to be set up in accordance to use it. It's a bridge year, in my opinion, because it helps you with the cap as the organization. It helps the player get some cash. It also puts a little bit of burden on ownership to have that cash ready. And as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that in order for the Chiefs to maintain their roster with their stars, especially with the contracts they have to give out to maintain their stars, you have to be able to spend more cash. You got to have the money on hand so you don't have to put it into the cap in delayed spending. And I think this is the kind of thing. It wasn't never going to be, $100 million for Chris Jones. It was going to be $3 million here, $4 million here for some of the lower end guys that you want to have on as rotational players, but don't break the bank in terms of the cash flow.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing, and you start looking at this across the NFL, and you start looking at it, specifically with the Chiefs, is they have to be, I hate using the word frugal, but I mean, it kind of fits. They have to look at what they have on their roster. They have to go find areas that they think they can improve for cheap, and they have to bet on high upside versus betting on quality. And what I mean by that is, to me, yeah, and I'm not saying that they're not going to go out and sign a wide receiver, so I want to be clear on that. But what I am saying is that maybe you're not going to go out and sign a guy like Calvin Ridley, and let's forget about the $23 million, because let's just say it was closer to 15, 16 million. Maybe you're not going to spend that on a wide receiver like Calvin Ridley, but that also gives you the ability to bring in 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 other guys that can be rotational guys that are going to fit certain needs for you. Wharton hits one of those. Say what you want. Irv Smith Jr. kind of hits one of those too, just because you need young guys at that position. You need somebody that can try to push Noah Gray a little bit. And he's learning from Travis Kelce. So it's going to be a phenomenal situation for him to be able to do that. So those are the types of guys that you're going to need to be looking at. And you have to be able to try to bet low risk, high reward type contracts. And that to me is what I see with the Irv Smith signing. Is it a great signing? Is it a guy that's going to push the needle when it comes to, starting this year? Obviously not, but could he push the needle to where maybe he forces somebody to pay him next year, or he forces the needle to where maybe Kansas City decides they want him back next year with a better deal? I mean, all that plays into it. And then you have Turk Wharton, who gets this deal from Kansas City, and he's played a pretty big role in the Chiefs for the past couple of years, even after or even before the injury.
Yeah. And it sets everything up for how you're going to evolve in this next cycle, not just the next wave of free agency, but the draft and everything this year. So where are they going next? How's this D-line set up? Coming up next on Locked On Podcast Network.
Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with the 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to special terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer.
You want to check out the special that's coming up. Mark your calendars for March 20th for the MLB special that we're going to run over on the Locked On Sports Today feed. Make sure that you get subbed up for that because it's coming. You're going to find it on March 12th live, 7 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to roll through the 24/7 channels here on YouTube as well as free on Amazon Fire TV. So check that out as well. what I want to be on fire about is setting up this defensive line. It was something that was an unfound strength, or an unexpected strength is probably the best way to put it, coming into this season. But the strength of the defense was about having push up front and pull in the back with the secondary. And I think that they have to double down. For me, that's a priority on the defensive rebuild here. And what they've done by bringing back Mike Pennell shortly ago, and now with Turk Wharton back on the roster next to Chris Jones, it sets them up for what they're going to do. I count Charles Omenihu as a guy that can play inside and outside, but he's probably going to play more outside, at least at first when he returns. FAU might be in that position to start in the meantime. We'll see. The guy that I think fits both bills that I'm waiting to be the next thing is I still think that there's a chance that Mike Dana comes back so that you get another veteran in there that knows the system, can play both ways, can play both positions, can give you everything that you want. I'm surprised that they haven't made that move earlier, and maybe it's because they aren't able to use the kind of deal that they gave Turk Wharton, and they're just going to have to go an old-fashioned 2 or 3 year contract. Maybe it's just a 1 year, but I do think they can get him back.
Well, and I think that the big thing that's stopping them from getting a guy like Mike Bolton back is probably the amount of money it's going to cost. And I'm sure he's had offers. I just can't imagine that a starting level defensive end in this league has not had offers. I'm not saying he's a world beater by any means, but he does his job and he does it well. And he can play multiple positions where he doesn't have to be just defensive end. He can come down inside and he can, go after the guards and the centers and really give you a change of pass rush from that perspective. So it's kind of surprising to me that he hasn't had a deal. And I'm not saying he's going to get, $10 million a year from somebody, or even, 7 or 8. I mean, he may end up getting 4 or 5, but I do think that it's going to be a little bit more expensive than you would want to do a 1 year deal on, because that's going to eat up a lot of the cap space that you have available. Chiefs currently going into today, and this does not include, I don't think, any of their EFRAs, and it definitely doesn't include the new deal. It's around $15 million still in cap space. So doing another and the bigger thing on that is, while you have that space available, you also have to realize that you're going to have probably $7 or $8 million for your draft class. And I haven't looked to see what that's going to cost them yet this year. But then you're also going to have money for when roster cuts are over with. And you have to go to the entire roster plus your practice squad. Plus, you're going to have money to operate during the season. So, $15 million seems like a decent amount, and it's okay. But I don't think that a deal like that gets done unless they for sure are trading L'Jarius Sneed, because the reality is that I don't know that they're going to have the cap space to continue doing those types of deals.
But I still feel that Dana's depth and everything that you said about him is real. What's really interesting to me is when you go over, SpotTrack did a comparison to try to estimate his market value. And they came up against a couple interesting comparisons in Carl Lawson, who had a 3-year contract, and Draymond Jones, who had a 3-year contract. They're putting Mike Dana's value at 16.7 a year. I think that's double what it actually. Do you think that I'm nuts? Am I just not giving Mike Dana the respect that he deserves?
How is he worth 16.7 when Omenihu's only worth 8? That doesn't make sense to me. And I understand that they're basing it all on stats, and they're basing it on trying to find guys that have had similar stats. Stats can say whatever you want them to say to an extent, especially when you start looking at defensive line stats when you're talking about stuffs and pressures and all that. And I get it to an extent, but there's also something about playing in a scheme and playing right in the scheme. So I think 16.7 would be incredibly high. And at this point, if he was going to get that type of deal, it would have happened day one. You're not going to get that type of deal at this point in the season. Or in the offseason, sorry.
And I hope they're very wrong, because there isn't that kind of money for Mike Dana. I do want him back. And I think if it's in the 5, 6, maybe even 8 range, it's possible. Certainly at the lower end, it's more possible. But that's the D-line situation as it stands today. I think the draft is bringing someone else. I do agree with you that they could keep 5 if they draft someone, and I do think that they will, unless something outlandish happens here. But what are they not going to do? Well, they're not going to have the services of one of your favorite tight ends. Who's moving on? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game in this tournament whenever you want, whether you're betting on an upset or the 1 seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook, and that is FanDuel. Right now, new customers are getting $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins on FanDuel, it's $200 back using point spreads, money lines, whatever you're looking for. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Visit us at FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet your college hoops until they cut down the nets right now on FanDuel. You also want to check out the Locked On Sports Today feed. It is free here on YouTube, but it is also available in a twist on Amazon Fire TV for free on Fire TV channels app as well. We are on Amazon officially now. You can watch us whenever you want. We are part of the rotation there on the Locked On Sports Today feed, which is 24/7. Check that out. One thing that I want to check out is there was a lot of consternation yesterday, but they were Smith signing. What does that mean? How are they going to rotate with Noah Gray and the possible return of Jody Fortune? Well, that possibility went out the window. Jody Fortune is a Miami Dolphin at this point. Does it surprise you that the team probably was the one that had less interest in returning Jody Fortune to the roster?
Maybe a little bit, but I think that you take that possibility when you don't when you don't tender him. I mean, he was an RFA, so you take the risk that somebody else is going to go offer more money. And the other side of it is maybe he didn't want to come back. I mean, maybe he didn't feel like this was a great place for him. I mean, he has been here. The guy's 29 years old, and he's been here 6 years, and I don't think he has 3 accrued seasons under his. I think he has 3 accrued seasons. That's why he would have been a restricted free agent. So he was on the practice squad for 3 years. And I'm not saying that that's not decent money, but for the job they're doing and for as much beating as they take, that's a rough situation. So, going to South Beach, going to Miami, going to the Sun, I kind of get it. I mean, I haven't even seen the terms of the deal. I just know that he got signed with Miami.
Right. No one's seen the terms that I'm aware of either. But sense with multiple rings, and I do think even on the practice squad, I think he's got 3 rings. At this point, it's about trying to make a little bit of money and get out of Travis's shadow because you're not going to get any more playing time. So why not go someplace where you feel you have an option? I think that this is probably best for both parties when it comes down to it because I didn't see an increase in playing time for him really coming, and I didn't feel like the risk of the re-injury was really worth it for the team.
Well, and the big question is going to end up being, what is he? I mean, we already kind of said, what is he getting paid? But the reality of that is, after they signed Irv Smith, were they even interested? I mean, that's the big reality when you start looking at it is, I'm not saying that they're the same tight end, the same player. They're not, but, it's a cheap guy that you can have on a smaller contract. That's what Irv Smith is. And we'll see if he ends up working out. But, to me, it doesn't shock me that he's gone. But what does shock me is they haven't really lost that many guys to free agency yet. I mean, yeah, they lost Allegretti, and I wish they could have brought him back. But their free agent class is still pretty full, or their free agency, their guys that were going to free agency is still pretty full.
Yeah, I mean that speaks to the success that they've had and the desire to keep that rolling. I'm glad to see that. I'm interested to see what happens next. Do you have a feeling for who's the next piece on the free agent market that the Chiefs have to worry about possibly losing or possibly signing back?
I don't have a great feeling. I think that the Snead thing is probably going to keep them from doing a lot of what they would want to do right now because that 19.8 really just hits them on the cap pretty bad. And I mean, they can do some things figuring that they're going to get a trade. They're going to get him traded, and maybe they can. But, if you can't get him traded and you go into the NFL draft and he's still on your roster, which would kind of be my fear at this point, and you're going to play him on the franchise tag, you're extremely limited as to what you're going to be able to do, and you're probably going to have to move money around with somebody else's contract because you're not going to have enough money to operate, would be my guess.
Yeah, that's my thought as well. I don't see MVS coming back even on a reduced contract. I think McColl's going to be able to be out there for a while and try to find himself his next home. Maybe it works out late in free agency, maybe even in the summer that he comes back if he doesn't find that home.
Yeah, and what really matters is what is going to happen with the what is going to happen in the draft. I mean, that's what's going to end up coming down to with a guy like McColl is what do the Chiefs do in the draft? Do they go out and get 2 wide receivers? Do they sign a guy in free agency? You know, we've been talking about, you know, Hollywood Brown. Another one came off the table in Curtis Samuel, who I think could have fit pretty well in Kansas City. And that was what, 3 years, $8 million a year, basically. So, you know, pretty reasonable contract. But, you know, you're looking at the Chiefs free agents. They don't really have Willie Gay. They lost, obviously. But that's pretty much it at this point. Willie Gay and Nick Allegretti.
Right.
And obviously now Jody Fortune. But, and Tommy Townsend, I guess. So a couple.
You to cover the special teams, of course. James Winchester back. Yeah.
I'm just looking at it. I mean, they brought back some of their guys that they wanted, and you know, at this point, it'll be what it'll be. I mean, I don't expect that Richie James is going to be back, mainly because I think that they looked at him as being their returner, and at this point, I don't know that they can go any other direction other than maybe having Kadarius Toney be the returner if he's going to be on the roster, because it's not going to help them to cut him. The only way they get relief is if they trade him. So
yeah, that is the thing. And I think with the market the way it is, we know about the draft. The draft is probably where the wide receivers are coming. We're going to tell you what that looks like next time we are together. On Monday, we have mock draft Mondays. We are doing them every week. We'll give you another scenario. We're going to get through as many as we can through actual draft day. We might even have some bonuses that we hit, maybe 2 mock drafts in a week. But you're going to want to be here for this next one because it allows us to switch a few things up. So don't miss Mondays. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell so you see everything and you hear everything over on Spotify and Apple and all the audio platforms. Then we're going to come back with more detail on where we're going next. Anything that breaks between now and the end of time, we're going to give you instant reaction on a bonus episode here in free agency as we get ready to start turning towards the draft after about the second wave. A lot of effort going into that now. You can find aspects of it in the Athletic Matrix over on RogueAPC.com, as well as a lot of the draft-oriented stuff at NFL33.com. Those are subscription sites. You can get on the Substack. You can get to Chiefs Corner, where there's a lot of free content as well as the behind-the-wall content. So make sure you check both those out. We appreciate you guys being with us. This has been a fun week so far. Next week's going to get even hotter as sort of those second-tier deals start to come down, and the Chiefs will be in on more of those, is my guess. So thanks for spending your time with us. We very much appreciate you. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back live. Maybe not live, but we'll be back for Monday on Mock Draft. Get your players and see who might fall to your Kansas City Chiefs for that three-peat. Thanks for being with us.